Hi there, and welcome to another episode of our Caregiver series. Here today with us, we have Vickie, and I will throw it over to her to introduce herself to start.
Hi, I'm Vickie Knighton, and I'm a full-time carer in the UK for my 84-year-old mother. She had a stroke in 2019 and cognitively struggled to recover, but physically recovered really well. And that's when she got her diagnosis of Alzheimer's and vascular dementia.
Okay, thank you, Vickie. So we'll just get right into the questions then. So the first question we have for you is, how long have you been a caregiver? And if you feel comfortable, can you walk us through the diagnosis process and what that was like for you and for your mom?
Yeah, so as I said, my mum had a stroke in 2019, and I was really concerned because she was told that she would recover fully from the stroke within 6 months, but it was quite clear that something wasn't quite right. So we went to our GP and explained some of the issues that mum was having. She didn't know her house. So she couldn't find her way around, and just generally cognitively wasn't with it at all. So the doctor did some very simple tests. When she obviously had the stroke, she'd obviously had CT scans, etc. So they put all that information together and gave us that diagnosis. At the time, I wasn't surprised because I knew something wasn't quite right. I think the word dementia, in terms for my mother, has got a meaning of madness. So I think she was quite taken aback that was the diagnosis, although deep down she sort of knew something wasn't right. We were given initially quite a lot of support. So we were assigned what they call a dementia navigator, who came to visit us and took us through quite a lot of information. So it was quite, sort of gave us an A4 booklet with lots of information in, and it was quite overwhelming. And I remember distinctly my mum asking the navigator when she was going to get better, and the navigator saying, "You're not, you're not going to recover from this. It is a disease." And I just remember gulping, feeling really, oh, could they not have said it a different way? But that is the reality of it. But it was quite a hard pill to swallow for me to sit there and for her to say, oh, and she still now keeps saying, when am I going to get better? And I just ignore that question. So I've done a lot of self-learning over the last 18 months, because before then I didn't know very much about dementia at all, hadn't been in our family that I was aware of. So especially with lockdown, there's plenty of webinars out there to look up information. I was working part-time, and mum had a couple of falls in the garden, and I was working from home on Zoom calls for quite lengthy amounts of time. And mum was just stuck because she couldn't get herself up off the floor. And then I decided that was the time for me to become full-time carer. It wasn't worth something happening and me not being available. So I've been caring for her full-time since October last year.
Perfect. Thank you so much for all of those stories and for sharing those experiences. It leads well into the next question, which is about task management. And as a full-time carer, obviously there's a lot of responsibilities that go into caregiving. So would you be able to describe what a regular day of your caregiving routine would look like and how you manage all of your tasks?
Yeah, I've always worked all my life until obviously very recently, so I'm used to multitasking. I think that's probably one of my really good skill sets that I luckily have. So managing my mum, I sort of treat it a bit like a job, really. I'm very good on the practical side, so initially getting her up in the morning, getting her washed and dressed, and, you know, organising her medication. Mum can do certain things for herself, so she can do her breakfast. But in terms of her finances, I have lasting power of attorney. So I'm able to deal with everything for her in terms of her bills and just general finances. So then we have a dog. So mum, I like to get mum out into fresh air, a bit of exercise, get her moving. So I always try and take her out somewhere, weather permitting. You know, her favourite thing is going for coffee and eating cake. That seems to make her happy. It makes me happy too. And so then I come back and, you know, do the housework, the tidying up. We've got quite a large garden as well. Mum loves looking out at the garden, so I try and keep it as on top of that as much as I can. Then obviously doing her lunch, doing the shopping, just day-to-day stuff really, and also keeping mum, I was going to say entertained, but I've learned that I'm not very good at that. I'm very good at the practical side of things and sorting things out and fixing things, but keeping her entertained, I've sort of given up because I've tried everything. My mum was an extremely active person before her stroke. She used to play golf 3 times a week, and if anything needed fixing, you would always go to her because she was the person that could do it. And now I've had to take over that role for the family. So it's been a very steep learning curve for me. So I used to get really concerned that I was practically looking after mum really well, but I wasn't stimulating her and entertaining her. And that's when it used to get me down a little bit, feeling that I'd failed her and that I wasn't being a very good carer. But then I spoke to the dementia navigator and a few other people, and they said you can only do what you can do. The fact that mum used to do all these things previously doesn't necessarily mean that she will want to do them now. So she doesn't want to do the garden. She doesn't want to do DIY type things. She does basically, she just likes to sit and look out the window all day, every day. So that's been quite difficult to deal with at times.
Thank you. Thanks, Vickie, for those answers. And again, you spoke to it a little bit, but what would you say for you has been the most challenging aspect of being a caregiver, and how do you begin to kind of cope with that?
Yeah, I think I've never done anything like this before. It's physically and mentally exhausting. I worry about my mum 24/7. I can never relax. You know, even if I pop out to walk the dog, I'm very conscious of the time. I feel very tight and anxious all the time. And I find to actually relax, and, you know, I've tried mindfulness courses and I'm great when I'm on the course. And then afterwards I go back into this hyped up, you know, Duracell bunny mode, and I'm running around again at 90 miles an hour or 100 miles an hour to get everything done. So yeah, I find that is quite stressful, but not in a business sense. You know, I've been running businesses before, which is very, very different, and I'm very competent at that. But this I find very difficult to manage those stress levels.
Definitely, yeah. So in terms of that, what does your self-care routine look like? So obviously we talk a lot about self-care and how important that is for the caregivers. What does your self-care routine look like, and what kinds of things would you recommend to other caregivers for self-care that have worked for you?
Yeah, I was very bad at self-care until about 3 or 4 months ago. And I, like a lot of people, had put weight on during lockdown. And I've always been very active and I used to love running. I used to love the good endorphins from running. And I thought, I've got to start doing things. I've got to look after myself. If I don't look after myself, I can't look after my mum. But you get caught in this horrible vicious circle, and I thought, I've just got to break it, and I have done. So I've lost all my lockdown weight, plus a little bit extra, thank goodness, of eating better and looking after myself. And I've started running again. I know it's not for everyone, but it does energize me in the mornings. And it's multitasking again, because I take the dog with me. So I'm exercising the dog and doing myself some good. And I just put some music on and I put my earphones on and I'm off. I don't run for miles because I'm not that fit anymore, but it really helps. But the other thing is, I would say for self-care, a lot of my friends have offered to help. How can I help you? And I'm oh, it's fine. I'm absolutely fine. I can manage. If people offer to help you, I'd say accept the help, even if it's coming round to your house and sitting with your loved one, just so that you can have a break and, I don't know, go for a walk or do whatever relaxes you. Just, you know, I felt guilty accepting help, or I'd failed, but accept that help. If people are offering, it's genuine. And that's what I would say.
Definitely. Thank you so much. That's great advice, and so great to hear about the running. That's amazing. So those were my questions for today. I'm going to hand it over to Ervin, and he can continue with the interview.
Thank you so much, Vickie. And thank you so much for sharing that with us. In your time as a caregiver, what have been some of the biggest lessons that you've learned?
I would say guilt, the feeling of feeling guilty all the time. And I don't think that's me. I think that's quite common with caregivers. The mix of emotions makes you feel guilty, keeps me awake at night. Doing the right thing. It's a little bit easier now, but I used to be paranoid about COVID. My mum was shielding for quite some time, and I was absolutely paranoid about taking her out or bringing COVID into the house. And yes, just this feeling of guilt. And because no one trains you to be a caregiver, was I doing the right thing? My communication skills have improved dramatically with my mum because I'm self-learning about dementia. You know, I think one of the things I've said, you know, I'd say a simple thing to my mum, so to can you go and make a cup of tea? And I actually broke down the number of steps that process to make a cup of tea, and it's something like 50 odd steps. To you and I, something is really simple, and I would never understand with my mum would just stand there looking like, where do I start? And then I would go, oh, go and sit down, I'll do it. But now I break it down and I get her to do more things to help. It could only be a little thing, you know, like put some water in the kettle, or can you get 2 cups up? And it takes a long time and a lot of patience, and it can be really exhausting, but it makes her feel good. Like even laying the table when we're having a meal. Okay, she might put 3 forks out, you know, a spoon, and it doesn't make any sense whatsoever, but it doesn't matter, she's had a go. And I don't say, oh, you know, you should have put 2 forks out or anything. I just quietly move it and change it, and it's fine. And so not getting frustrated. And I think it's another expression I use, just don't sweat the small stuff. What does it matter? If you've got 3 forks out, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's answered your question. I might.
Oh, that's amazing. And that's some really great advice as well. And a very positive way of looking at things. Have you ever experienced burnout and for high levels of stress? And if you did, how did you deal with that?
I would think I've probably just come through that. So yeah, I felt exhausted. I think number one, self-care was an issue. I think obviously losing the weight, I feel so much better about myself. I wasn't massively overweight, but it makes a difference. Starting the running, trying to find myself again and be me is really important. And I've just taken a really big step. I haven't had a break for probably nearly 3 years. And I've actually booked my mum into respite care for 2 weeks. And I do feel very mixed about it. And I've actually booked a holiday just for a week in a staycation in the UK. And I'm really looking forward to it. And it's really lifted my spirits. And I think probably a few days ago, if we were having this conversation, I hadn't done that, I don't think I would have been quite so positive and smiley, maybe. I don't know. But I'm really looking forward to it. I am a little bit anxious about how my mum's going to react. We went together to look at a couple of care homes. The first one I didn't feel was suitable. The second one ticks a lot of boxes, if not all the boxes. I thought it was a really positive visit. And then Mum said, right at the end of it, as we were leaving, I'm not wanted. Nobody wants me. And it just, it nearly broke my heart. And I just said, Mum, you are wanted. It's just, I need to be a better person, a stronger person to look after you better. So I need the break. You've got lots of people around you supporting you and looking after you. And actually, I don't have anyone. So this is my way of recharging my batteries so that I'll be able to do all these great things with you. I've still got that battle to be had. So I'm trying to say to her that she's also going on holiday. I don't want her to feel it's a punishment, and I'll buy her some new clothes for her holiday and some nice things that she can take and things in with her, pick photos and things that she likes to try and make it easier. But I know I've got that battle, not a battle to come, but battle within myself to deal with. But I need that break. Otherwise, I'll be on my knees.
For sure. And I love the way you framed that experience and didn't let your mother feel bad about it. So that's really great. And do you think you can share, for our last question, what's the most rewarding aspect of being a caregiver?
Well, obviously I love my mum to the moon and back. And we've always been there for one another. And this is where I'm going to get a bit emotional. She has always been my best friend, my confidant. And I know that if I was in trouble, my best friend would help me. And I have lost my mum. She's not the same person anymore. But she's still my mum, and I do it for love. She often says to me, there are times, a lot of times now, where she doesn't know who I am. And that's really difficult. But I seem to have overcome the emotion of that now, and I accept it, and it's not her fault. But it is a difficult one to deal with. She thinks I'm a paid carer that's come in to look after her. And we do have some very strange and probably quite funny conversations if someone was listening to it. But I do it because I do it for love. And people say to me, you do an amazing job. It's wonderful what you do. But I'm just family. I'm just her daughter. And it's just within me to give her that.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your experience, Vickie, and for answering our questions. That's all the questions that we had for you today. And for our audience, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll catch you on the next one.